And let me get rid of that. Okay. So first things first, again, I'm Lorena. Just a little bit about me, a couple of, the advertisements that you have to do about yourself, a couple of the awards that we've won. One of the biggest ones that we're proud of is the 2024 Leaders in Digital Technology Award. We were honored by NJ Biz last, God, a year ago already. So that's always good when we get good PR for the work that we're doing. If you are part of NJ Biz, I'm sure you'll see me at some of the other networking events there as well. But I happen to love the chamber. I am a chamber oldie from God, I think we're going back 12 years now. So let's talk a little bit about how we do things here at LW&H. We do believe that every time you're talking about implementing a new process or a new system or anything new in a technology phase, it should follow three to six different phases, and it really depends on where you are in the journey. It really should start with an assessment, and that assessment is an internal company. What are we actually looking for? What are we doing? What are we trying to fix? Instead of jumping right into selecting the CRM. A lot of times we see folks going right into hey, let's just start demoing, let's just start buying, and then we sometimes end up with the wrong systems. So really do an assessment, do a needs analysis internally of what you're looking for. And we're going to give you some examples. The second part of this is really to map out what you're looking to get. And by mapping out, I legitimately mean drawing out step 1 to step 2 to step 3 and so on, so that you can really understand the human behavior that you're trying to compensate for with the technology. You don't want to just succumb to whatever the CRM is telling you to do, but you really want to take what your team is doing already, and if they're doing it well, and then incorporate the technology. So the mapping is going to be very important. The next step will be the actual implementation of the CRM that you've selected. Then you're going to make sure that your data is actually going to come over correctly and that you've actually mapped all the right fields so that you continue to have good data in the system. And then from there, you'll go into what I call the user adoption mode, which could be where everyone's just learning how to use it. There's a training window for all the team members. And then eventually you might start doing some maintenance and some enhancements. So from the folks that are here today, how many of you are already using CRMs, if you don't mind sharing, just so that I can get an idea as to where you guys are? You have one, but you're kind of not really there, right? Yeah, got it.
Sorry, I use it as a glorified Rolodex, so I'm hoping to get something out of this that I could take it a step farther.
Yeah. It's most people use that where it's just sitting there and they're not really utilizing it. So you got to look at the big picture. So again, we listen, we don't judge. You guys have seen that TikTok thing. How many of you are using the CRM? How many of you feel like you're using it to its full potential? It's a common question. And the reason that I ask is because that really kind of dictates how you're going to start this process. So first things first is for those of you that don't know or you're new to looking at what a CRM is just a very fancy acronym for customer relationship management tool. Now, the misconception is that a CRM is primarily and solely for sales and business development, but it doesn't have to do that. What we've seen now is with the evolution of the technology and the way that the integrations are really there, you can really use a CRM as not only your marketing modules, but also your customer relationship, your business development, your project manager. It can actually be all encompassing to almost every area of your business. So it really depends on what you're looking to fulfill. For the most part, most CRMs will have email integration. That basically means that your emails will connect. For the most part, you should be able to follow up on projects, whether they're internal projects or external projects. You want to have some sort of control over how you're delivering the goods and services that you're actually offering. And if you don't have a project management system that's exclusive to what you're doing, you definitely want to make sure you leverage the CRM project management areas inside of the system. Documents. Documents are tricky because a lot of us are using OneDrive. A lot of us are using Google Drive. Some of us are using Dropbox or Box or a combination of all of them. So what documents are going to live in the CRM, if any at all, is a conversation you definitely need to have with your team to make sure that you're actually setting up expectations correctly. If you're going to be using it for any sort of email marketing, that's a very important qualifier, because if you are going to consider using the CRM for mass emails and email marketing and having sales scripts, somebody have a question, or was that just noise in the background? I just want to make sure. I think it was just background. I'm going to mute you. But again, I don't think I can mute you actually. So if you can mute yourself, if you're in the background, that would be great. But again, unmute yourself if you have any questions. Um, the big thing is to make sure that if you're going to be doing any sort of email marketing or sales scripting, you want to make sure you have a CRM that'll actually allow you to do that, because not all CRMs are created equal when it comes to mass marketing. And then, of course, the bulk of the work should be done around the relationship management. But I want to be clear on what relationship management means within a CRM. The CRM is supposed to make it so that you can see how you're actually connected to that particular customer from a completely holistic perspective. So not just their phone number, their name, their company, and their email, but more importantly, how they're connected to you and perhaps to other people in your orbit. So for example, if I looked in my CRM and I looked up Randall, I would see that I am connected to him because he's been part of some of my events in the past. I've networked with him one-on-one in the past. He's a part of the chamber. So under his profile, not only would he be associated with his company, but he would also be associated with the Morris County Chamber of Commerce to show where our connection actually came from. So you want to make sure that your CRM is going to be set up to actually connect your contacts together to show you how they actually came to be in your world. Any questions on that part before we kind of move forward? Okay. Yeah, go for it. You're muted. You got to unmute.
Sorry about that. Sounds like you're talking something similar to tags in like MailChimp. Does that sound about right?
They're different. So tags in MailChimp are a way for you to actually select folks when you want to send out an email to a subset of people, right? When you're looking inside your CRM, you actually want to have connections, right? So the Morris County Chamber of Commerce would actually show related contacts, and it would have all the people that I've met through the chamber. Inside of your profile, it would show me your information, but it would also show you as an associated company with the Morris County Chamber of Commerce, because that's how we actually were connected. So it's a
Okay,
little bit more than tags. It's really having almost like a dual home for your contact, right? Your contact will live in the place of its actual company, but also any associated organizations.
that's more clear. Thank you.
And it's really, really important more for nonprofits than anything else, because if you, or anyone that works with nonprofits, because for example, you might be, the owner of your company and you're dealing with everything that has to do with limousine and car services, so that I know that if I looked you up, that's what I'm going to find about you. But you might be on the board for, I don't know, a local charity that I'm trying to work with. So knowing that you're on the board as their, board chair of the board, that's going to be helpful for me to know if I'm trying to actually make some other connections. So that's
Excellent.
what I mean, that you should have multiple places for that contact.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So making sure that you understand that the system will actually be able to do that for you is going to be super important. Okay. So now let's move on to when you start to actually get to the evaluation portion, right? Most of the evaluation options that you have are, let's just start demoing and trialing CRMs, right? Let's just start doing trial accounts everywhere. People just start getting trial accounts left and right for different systems, and they just start trying to figure out what that is. Well, demoing and trialing CRMs effectively is not going to happen at the beginning of this journey. If you start getting, free trials and just starting to log on and play with them, that's actually not going to be very much use to you, because it's such a completely different system. And though all systems have some sort of similarity between them, they all operate very differently behind the scenes. So for you to just jump in right into trial and demo may actually be a hindrance, because you might feel overwhelmed by the information and the options that you have. So taking a step back and saying, okay, did I really need to look at this, at this particular system? Most people jump right into comparing the popular CRM. So let's look at Salesforce and Zoho and HubSpot, figure out which one. And they'll focus primarily on price point. They'll say, hey, I know the price point that I can afford, and I'm going to focus on that. Again, these are all things that you need to do, but not at the very beginning. In fact, I think this is more like step 2 or 3 of what you're going to be doing when you're actually evaluating the CRM. We actually want to go a little bit slower. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is you really want to use a CRM to improve primarily your sales and customer service options. And if you start with sales and customer service um, could be used as part of like your operations, your project management, your overall customer satisfaction area. So like that's all encompassing. But in reality, what you want to do is you want to start with this part. You want to start with not only the assessment of what do we need, but you want to start with the mapping. And I mentioned that in the very beginning. You want to map out your current process. You want to use flow charts. You want to create visuals. You can use a dry erase board. You can use anything you want as far as figuring out how things are working right now in your organization. Step one, step two, and step three. Because without understanding how things are working, it's going to be really hard for you to demo a CRM to see if it can do what you actually need it to do. This will also help you with that list of things that you are not going to be able to negotiate. Your non-negotiables when it comes to what the CRM can do is going to be determined from you having these conversations with your team as to how are things working right now and what are the biggest pain points? What are the things that you guys are doing manually that you don't like? That if you had budget is no option, budget has no limit. You can do whatever you want. You've got a magic wand to create any system you want. What does that look like for you guys? Like what do we want to get? The more you can include your actual team members that are doing the job, the better off the user adoption is going to be because they're going to feel like they're part of the process and they're going to feel like their input is actually being valued. So when it comes down to actually implementing the system, they're going to be much more likely to give you positive and negative feedback without feeling like they're being attacked or over, like somebody's watching over every little step that they're doing. So mapping these things out is going to be super important to help you figure out what is it that I'm looking for from a CRM. So for us, when we start with mapping, we always talk about what do we have in the lead world? What happens when we move that over to an opportunity? What is our trigger moment? What are some things that we're looking to do? What are some questions we're asking? We do a lot of role playing in that so that we can map out all the processes that we want to have. Okay. Any questions in that section as far as to how to map anything out and how to actually talk to your team about getting their feedback? Okay, keep going. Next thing we want to do is we want to talk about segmentation. When you're looking at the data that you have, what do you want to be able to track? Do I want to be able to track demographics, psychographics, and these are all marketing related terms, but like what kind of questions do I want to have in my contact area? So for example, and I'm going to pick on Randall again, just because I know him and he doesn't mind if I pick on him, but if I wanted to know what counties he services and the type of events that he really wants to work with, I'm going to ask him questions that pertain to that. And if I'm in event planning, knowing the types of events that he works with is going to be important for me because that's going to make me able to it's going to allow me to search in my database for him. It's going to allow me to look at his profile and be like, oh, that's why I had saved him as a contact because we work in similar industries, right? So depending on how detailed you want your contact records to be is also going to be important because not all CRMs allow you to do customization at the same level. So for example, Zoho still has a free platform. Their free platform is great for an entry-level CRM, but you can't really create a lot of custom pick lists or a lot of custom fields or any sorts of dependencies, right? If I select this field, show me the next field. So if you're going to need that, you really can't go into the free option. But if you know you need that maybe 6 months from now or a year from now, you can start with the lower level and then go up and know what you need to grow into. So understanding how detailed you want your company records and your contact records to be is going to be important. Again, you may not need to know every single question that you want to have or every single field that you want to have in your system, but you want to have some idea of, do I need to have the capability to add my own fields because of what I do? It's so industry specific that I need to be able to create these lists myself, or can I live with what they're going to give me? Because that's also going to help you determine what kind of CRM you're looking for. Next thing is think of all the things that you do from a marketing perspective. And the reason that I bring marketing into the conversation is marketing and sales are so closely tied together. And if your marketing team and your sales team are not working well or are working super well hand in hand right now, you want to have conversations about what's working well, what's not working well, and what are the things that we want to put in the CRM versus leaving out. If you're already using MailChimp, you may not want to replace MailChimp, in which case you may want to bring the data back and forth between your CRM and MailChimp. So you're going to want to make sure you get a CRM that has a connection so that you don't have to worry about how am I going to get this stuff back and forth. If you don't have a mass email and you're like starting from scratch, you may want to look for a CRM that has a ton of marketing components to it so that you can actually leverage that as you're growing your business. So where you are in your marketing life really will determine as well what kind of CRM you're looking to get. And this is an important conversation to have because not all CRMs have the same marketing strength. HubSpot is one of the ones that is known for having the best marketing, like basically out of the box in a package, wrapped and delivered to you when you start working with HubSpot. However, some of their customization, when you get really big, is not as great, right? So you've got to be able to weigh, and it doesn't mean that the CRM that you choose today is going to be the CRM that you're going to be in for like the next 15 years. Just like everything else in your organization, this is going to be something that you're going to have to look at least every 3 to 5 years to see if there's something that needs to be upgraded, modified, or possibly even upgraded to a whole new level of system. Okay. And all of these questions are going to be important. Next is you want to talk about what key factors do I want to consider when I'm looking for a CRM, right? What are the things that I'm getting for free as my core features? What does the user interface look like? And that basically means how does it look? And it sounds really silly, but bubbly icons, more colorful, like that orangey red, very subdued kind of look is very user friendly. If you're looking at an older system that is very boxy, very table-like, and it just looks very squarish, it tends to put people off and it makes them a little bit more agitated. So the look and feel of the system makes a very big difference in how likely your team is to adopt the CRM. The customization options. If you're going to take a screenshot of anything, this little image right here is possibly the best thing that you can look at. And we got this from a couple, there's a couple of places out on the web that you can pick this from, but Small Business HQ is a great reference tool that has a bunch of little know-hows and everything that has to do with small businesses. But scalability and integration. Scalability and integration is super, super important. How likely am I to acquire a new company? If you're a team of 15 and you're looking to acquire another company, you want to make sure that you're not, oops, bear with me a second. You want to make sure that you're not getting a CRM that cannot scale with you or that cannot integrate things that you're looking to get. If you're working in QuickBooks and you want to make sure that your CRM will talk to QuickBooks, you have to make sure that you select a CRM that already has that capability so that you don't have to work around using Zapier or Workato or some of the other integration tools that are out there. A direct integration is almost always better. You want to definitely look at the total cost of ownership. How much is it going to cost me to set it up versus how much is it going to cost me to maintain? Some CRMs will include a basically setup fee and they'll walk you through it, but be very careful in that setup fee is no different than you Googling and YouTubing a bunch of how-to scenarios. Their involvement is very, very limited. So you want to find out, do I need to get a consultant or a partner to help us actually put this into place? The total cost of ownership is also going to be very heavily based on the number of users. There are very few CRMs out there right now that are like one cost for everyone, right? That is a flat fee for the company. And then it doesn't matter whether you have 5 people or 100 people, it's the same cost for everyone. And if there are systems like that available, which I know there are some, they are not my favorites. And I will tell you that they're not my favorites because they're extremely basic. If you can offer a CRM that is a 1 monthly price for no matter how many users you have, you're usually getting a very scaled down, very simple CRM, which is not a bad thing, depending again on where you are in your business lifespan. If you're just starting out, that's a great way to start. But as you get bigger and you have more employees, it's usually not the most affordable from an economies of scale. The other thing you want to consider is how much is it going to cost me to maintain it and set it up in year one compared to year two and year three? CRMs are not a one and done. You have to be able to keep up as updates happen, as things happen in your industry. You want to make sure you're able to make modifications to it. You also want to make sure that you're not sharing logins. People like to do that a lot. They're like, oh, we'll just get a couple of licenses and then we'll share it. There are a lot of limitations that come with sharing. Sometimes your email will not sync because it can't sync with an email that has multiple users. Sometimes it'll kick a person out. So if I'm in there and then somebody else logs in, it'll actually kick me out and not save my information. So you have to be very careful with sharing logins. There's also an issue with accountability and that you can't assign tasks, you can't assign things to get done within a CRM if you don't have a user license for every single person that's going to be in there. You also don't want to limit who can be in the system because big picture, you want to have more transparency within the organization when you're using a CRM so that everybody can kind of see where they're at on their tasks and their KPIs, their key performance indicators. So the more that you can actually set up ahead of time, the better off you're going to be. The last two things are going to be super critical, and that's anyone that's just joining in, definitely please unmute yourself if you have a question. But in the meantime, please just make sure you mute yourself for any background noise. From a customer support and vendor reputation, it's extremely important that you consider this. If you're not going to be working with a local partner, having customer support, someone that can actually pick up the phone and talk to you is extremely important because you'll be able to get the support that you need. And by getting the support that you need, I mean two things. One is not simply saying, hey, how do I add a new field? Or how do I add this new report? Or how do I add this new pick list so that I can have different selections? You want to be able to talk to somebody who will actually ask you questions as to why you're doing something. Well, sure, you wanted to create a new field. May I ask why you're creating that field? What are you hoping to accomplish from that? Is your end goal to create a report that shows you XYZ? Having that sort of interaction makes a very big difference because then you're not just creating fields and reports just for the sake of doing it. You're actually being very conscious as to why you're doing the things you're doing in the CRM, which will allow your data to stay clean longer. Vendor reputation is extremely important. The smaller systems that are like a flat fee for everyone tend to be much newer, so they don't have enough experience in this. They may be harder to reach. They may only have working hours that are only available through chat. Their reputation as far as getting folks that will allow you to get on the phone and do a screen share within 24 hours may be limiting. So you want to make sure you're looking at those key things when you're going to start shopping around. So business size, budget, and your growth plans are going to heavily weigh into your decision. If your company is just starting out and you're planning on staying under 10 users for the next foreseeable future, the CRMs that you're looking at are going to be much more lower priced than somebody that's been in the business for probably 5 years and has about 25 employees. The budget that you have set aside, when you're looking at budget, be super careful to not just look at the cost of the CRM. Also take into account how much is this going to cost me if I don't do it? So if it's taking my team 2 hours to do something in Excel that would probably take an hour to do it in the CRM, how much am I paying for that team's hourly time spent on that spreadsheet? Over time, how much does that equate to? I can tell you with almost pure certainty that most of the time, most of our clients, when we start to do ROI investigations on what they're looking to spend versus how much they're actually losing in inefficiency, It's a direct ROI, and we can almost always show an ROI, that return on investment, within the first 15 months of a system. Because for every hour, even if you consider that an hourly wage employee is making no more than, between taxes and everything else, $30 an hour, if they're wasting 2 to 3 hours a week on things that are not needed, that's easily close to $100 a week that you're spending on them doing something that really shouldn't have to be done manually. That easily covers their user fee on a monthly basis. So you really have to look at what the cost is for you not to do something versus to do it. Okay. Oh, did somebody else have a question? Was that something else in the background? I think that was background noise. Gonna keep going. I don't know why this image always comes out really squiggly. But these are most of the common struggles that we see with folks when they're going into a CRM. They are struggling because they have spreadsheets all over the place. They have a ton of handwritten notes. They have emails. The team is not really sure what they want to do. There are some people that are using the system, other people that are not using the system. Some are using it this way, some are using it that way. No one really knows how to run reports. No one really knows how to do anything in the system. Like, it's there, but like you said, Randall, it's like a glorified, Rolodex. So we want to make sure that we're talking to the team as to, what do we have out there? How many spreadsheets do we have? How many would we be looking to replace and get rid of and put all that data in the system? How would we go about doing that? How many things are we okay with tracking in spreadsheets? What kind of reports do we want to get? What kind of insight do we want to have? All of that is going to help you, again, backtrack into the kind of automations and the kind of systems that you want to have. If you're not actually doing some of this forecasting of wants and needs before you start shopping around, you're probably going to end up settling for a system and then trying to change your behaviors to what the system is telling you to do. And 9 times out of 10, that doesn't work, because people get frustrated because it's not the way their brain kind of works. And they're so used to doing things a particular way. The other thing is, that's not on here, is acknowledging that change is hard, and acknowledging that setting up a CRM is going to involve some growing pains for the teams. And there's going to be moments of angst, and there's going to be moments of uncomfortable conversations as you're setting up all these new flows. It's super important that they acknowledge, and that management acknowledges that, yes, this is going to be a little messy in the beginning, but there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to get to a goal. You also have to make sure that if you're going to request or require your team to start using the CRM, you also, as the leaders in the organization, have to be using it, because that is a top-down example. You have to make sure that you're showing them that the reports you're asking for, you're actually going to use, and they're not just doing busy work. There is so much dissatisfaction when an employer or a manager or C-level suite executive will say, I need a report that shows me X, Y, and Z. The work is getting entered and the work is being done, and it takes an extra 2 minutes per transaction to create these entries for them. And then they never look at that report. And there's never any conversations about those reports. So we want to make sure that they're aware that they're going to be using the information that you're putting into the system. You also want to make sure that when you're looking at the comparisons of systems, you have 2 important things to consider. One is that it's going to be your single source of truth. When you're comparing CRMs, you want to make sure that you have a CRM that it's going to be available on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, on the web, while you're traveling, at night, in the morning, etc. Because you want to be able to log in, update, and look at the information real time. It cannot be something that only gets updated on Fridays. It cannot be something that it only gets updated once a month before your big managers meeting. It has to be something that becomes a way of life in your organization, so that it can become the single source of truth. And that sometimes means putting a really hard line in the sand, saying no more spreadsheets for this piece of information from this date forward. It has to be in the CRM, or it's not going to be reported on. So making sure you have those conversations. You also want to make sure that as you finish your map, you talk to the team about data entry. Are we going to start creating naming conventions when we create records? Are we going to make sure we have some fields that are required? Maybe we make it a rule that every single time a new contact gets added to the system, the lead source telling us where this name came from must be filled in order for anything to happen. Do we need any sort of automation? Like if something comes in from the website and it goes directly to the CRM, do we want an auto reply going out without us having to do anything about it? That's going to come into play as to what kind of system you're looking for. Again, these are all things you're going to keep track of so that then you can start to compare the CRMs. Oops, bear with me. The last thing is you want to talk, not the last thing, but one of the last few things to talk about is really key metrics. When you're comparing systems, you want to look at the reporting capabilities of that system to see if it's going to give you the data that you want. What kind of things do I want to focus on? Do you work within leads and opportunities, or are you only contacts and opportunities? Leads are what I call figments of our imagination, right? They're like the very first things that we get. They're all the business cards that we get from a networking event. They're all the names that just basically live in the system, but they can only be a lead once. Once you have a trigger, like whether you have a discovery meeting, you get on a phone call, they decide to send you some information to actually get you to quote them, or whatever that trigger is that gets them from a figment of an imagination that you had from a networking event to an actual real opportunity, you want to make sure you have all the data mapped out correctly. So you want to make sure you have all the credentials that you're going to need to actually get that proposal going to the client. It's super important that you know that a lead can only be a lead once, because that's when you know the least about them. After that, they become contacts. So you want to have a system that'll allow you to run metrics based on what's important to you. If lead conversion is not a metric that you're interested in, then having a system that offers you leads to opportunities is probably not essential. If having just a sales pipeline is all you're worried about, then making sure that you have a CRM that'll allow you to get you reports based on how many deals you have by stage, what your close rate is by sales rep, that's going to be important. If it matters to you to know the customer lifetime value, like how much has this customer purchased from me over the last 10 years, over their entire lifetime, I need to make sure I have a system that automatically rolls all of those opportunities up. So these are all things to consider before you start looking at the CRMs. What are some of the things that I want to have in the system? Now, you're making a list of all the things that you want to have. And remember, I keep saying want. The list of wants versus needs should be very different. Your needs are your non-negotiables, things that you cannot live without. Your wants, you're willing to make some sacrifices on, you're willing to make some adjustments so that if you find the system that has all of your wants covered, but it's so astronomically high at this point that you really can't make it work, we can start cutting down on those wants to get to a system that's probably a little bit more affordable. So you really want to be able to look at the two things. If you're going to be using it for marketing purposes as well, you want to make sure that you talk to your team about what kind of customer engagement metrics do we want to have to make sure that the CRM we choose will actually show us that. Do we want to talk about service? Do we do things with tickets? So, am I in a ticket-based organization where I'm offering IT support and I need to make sure that we are responding to tickets right away? Do we want to be able to track our net promoter score, which is basically how happy are they? For Randall, it's super important that the people that book his services are happy because they're going to refer business over to him. So does he need to be tracking customer satisfaction? Are there surveys he should be sending out after he does an event, just to make sure that he's able to bring them back when they have their next event? The churn rate, right? How many people were coming to you for many, many years or for a longer period of time, and then they all of a sudden stopped? And why did they stop buying from you? So if those are metrics that you want to have or need to have, because that answer might vary depending on your industry, you want to make sure you have a CRM that will allow you to run those reports. Does that make sense so far? I know I've thrown out a lot of lingo, but hopefully I'm clarifying it enough for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Ideally, you want to look and kind of visualize, what does this dashboard look like for me, right? Does it look like this, where I have a bunch of little pictures and a lot of little icons and summaries and numbers? Or am I not a visual person with these little graphs and all I want is just like tables that look like spreadsheets? There's no right or wrong answer. It really depends on what your team is happy with. But this look and feel is going to be important. So when you're doing the demos and you're doing the trials, you want to see, can I get these reports? Can I get these dashboards? How easy is it for me to narrow these down by person, by group, by team, so that I can actually get the data that I want? Eventually, once you're looking at the CRM and you've selected it and you start to go down the road, okay, we're going to do this system, you're going to have to go dig deep down to the employee psyche and make sure that you understand that this is going to be hard and there's going to be good and bad moments. Whenever you select a system, there might be some past work experiences where they're going to despise a system that you've selected. I mean, I can't tell you the number of hatred conversations that I have over Salesforce where people just go, oh, don't mention Salesforce. I hate it. It was awful. I used it at the last company. It was a nightmare. But then when you start to ask, well, who set it up? And how was it set up? And did they do this part? Did they do this? Did they? Well, no, they just kind of put it in. They never, there was no training. There was no this. Well, it's not really the system. It was more of how it was rolled out. I've had folks that say, oh, no, I don't want to deal with Zoho CRM. They were just too complicated and I can never get somebody on the phone. Okay, well, which plan did you have? Depending on which plan you had, the support was only available on chat, but now they have a phone option. So which one were you looking at? What was wrong with them? So you want to make sure that if there is a small team, the more user experience that they had in a prior system, you ask them what was good, bad, and ugly about it. And what, if anything, was good from it, right? Like we really want to focus on the good from that system. Because again, when you do the demo with those systems, whichever system you're choosing, you can actually leverage those questions and those complaints that they had to ask the sales rep. Listen, I've had a couple of employees who had this particular system. This is one of their concerns. They weren't really happy with this. Great. This is, at least they'll have an answer for you. If you're buying it at the lower price point because you're just starting out, you might not have that sales rep interaction. However, it's not going to stop you from doing a really quick Google search to say, hey, how good is the customer support for XYZ, and being able to get some feedback from that. That's going to allow you to build metrics internally for what happens once you do select the system, because it doesn't stop when the system goes live, right? It's super important that once your system has gone live, you've got operational efficiency metrics, right? You've got some way of knowing if this is working. Was all this time and money and investment worth it? And I hate to say this, but this is not like, you're going to get this done in a month. Like, that's not happening. Like, this is not a 1-month project. Your planning should take 3 to 6 months, depending on the size of your organization. The planning should take 3 to 6 months of well thought out mapping, conversations, dialogue, and wish lists, and really creating that really solid needs analysis. As you have that down and you start to demo, the demo could easily take another 1 to 3 months, depending on how many systems you're looking at, how many you've narrowed it down to, and how big and how many key players that have to be involved in these meetings. Once you've selected the plan, you have to put everything together. Again, depending on the size of your company and how many team members are involved and how much customization you're going to need. You're going to need to hire a person that'll help you fix it if they're not going to offer the services through the CRM company. But you're going to have to actually develop that CRM and actually put all the fields and the values and everything, and then figure out how you're going to get your data from the old system to the new system. Even if you're starting from scratch, there's some time that it takes for you to actually develop and create the new system. That process, again, depending on the size of your organization, can easily take 3 to 6 months again. By the time you actually go live and you're ready to actually start using it, from the day you go live, you're entering user adoption phase. Your user adoption phase is, again, going to be another 3 to 6 months. The first 30 to 60 days are going to be brutal. People are going to be upset. They're going to complain. They're going to be happy. They're going to love it. They're going to hate it. There's going to be such a roller coaster of emotions while they figure out the system. eventually going to hit a groove around 60 days where everybody's going to be like, all right, I can kind of feel like this is working. Somewhere around day 100 is like when everybody starts to feel really comfortable. But that's also when people start to say, I wonder can we do, if we added this, could we then do that? Could this other thing also be done? And all of a sudden you start having questions. And there's a couple of months right after that where you start to do a little bit more changes to the system and tweaking some things around. And then by month 6 of using the system, everybody feels like they're in a really great place. Usually by year 2, you're ready for an upgrade in some way, shape, or form. So this is not a one and done thing. Like I said before, it really takes time. But the reason that you have to think about the efficiency metrics ahead of time before you start looking for a CRM is because you want to know what kind of support are you going to have from the company that you're buying this from as you grow. You also want to make sure that you are able to scale and grow. Are you starting out at their best platform? Are you starting out at their only platform because they only have one level? So you want to make sure you have those thoughts again before you're actually jumping into anything. There are some tips that I'm going to give you, even though they don't have to do with selection, but I think they're super important for user adoption and training. Start with making CRM adoption super easy and rewarding. Make sure your team knows what's in it for them because we all want to do things that are good for us, right? Like we're kind of all a little selfish in that way. So you want to make sure that the CRM is going to make the sales, the service team, the project managers, it's going to make their job easier. It might cause a little confusion. It might cause a little bit of headaches. There might be a little bit more manual work in the beginning, but we want to make sure that we're showing them why we're doing this and how it's going to make their lives better in the end. In some cases, you could gamify it. You could really put in gamification in some of these CRMs where when you mark a deal close won, there's confetti that shows up when you mark the deal won. It makes them feel really happy, like there's confetti flying in my screen. Other times you can make contests, like the number of contacts that are added every single week. Whoever has the highest number can get, an Amazon gift card for $10 at the end of the week. You can definitely put things in to create some sort of engagement from your team. But it also makes sure that it allows you to be creative in creating a contest for data accuracy, making sure that all the entries and all the fields that you want it to be entered into the system for the reports that you want are actually getting filled in. So if you ran a report at the end of the week, whoever had the most contacts with the most information wins a prize or wins points towards a bigger prize. You can make this interactive and fun. And it sounds cheesy, but it does work. And again, leadership buy-in. Management must be using the system, must understand the terminology, must be using the lingo, and really set the example. And I recommend something that I didn't mention when you're doing the mapping is creating a list of acronyms and terminology that are important for you and how they're going to relate in the system. If your team is calling leads prospects, you want to make sure that you can rename that in the CRM so that the team is used to looking at the word that they're familiar with. If instead of using opportunities, you call them deals, you want to make sure that the CRM allows you to make that change so that, again, you're using the lingo that you normally use so that it's not foreign to them. All these little things make a huge difference. Effective training strategies, once you've actually selected and implemented your CRM, micro training sessions. These are super, super small training sessions. Don't roll this out in like a 9-hour training day. Like no one's going to grasp. It's just too much information. Do micro sessions. Do small little bite-sized training. You can do the 8-hour roll-up. That's fine. But then keep it going with, once a week we meet for 30 minutes with the sales team, and once a week we meet 30 minutes with the support team, just so that you can show them little things every single week so that it keeps them engaged. Make sure you record as much as you can so that they can easily follow along at their own pace. And this is a big one. Select power users. Find champions within your organization that are going to be the go-to people so that if somebody else is not around, they have someone that they can go to that might be able to answer their question. That's going to help you have success in the user adoption of any CRM that you ultimately choose. That's a huge, huge win. Biggest pitfalls, avoid over purchasing. Like they're going to sell you things that you don't need, bells and whistles that are not relative to what you need. poor planning from an implementation perspective or from an adoption perspective, make sure you plan out as a team what you're going to be doing before, during, and after. Inadequate training, if you don't do enough training, if you don't do enough check-ins, it's going to not allow your team to feel like they actually have the support that they need to understand new technology. You cannot be inconsistent. You cannot allow the CRM to be the one that I update on Fridays. It can't be I only log in on Tuesdays and that's when I do my CRM updates. It has to be a place where they live every single day. You have to consider your future plans. If you know you're going to be acquiring another company in 2 or 3 years, you have to think about that in that perspective. If you know you're going to be hiring another sales rep, instead of thinking of just you and the other person that sells, pretend your sales team is now 4 people. Pretend your sales team is now 5 people. So you can start to think at what limitations and what things you might need to consider as your team is growing. All of these things are going to allow you to really fine tune and select the CRM correctly. So that's basically it. Well-managed CRM is going to give you more sales. It's going to give you happier customers. It's going to give you better decision making. You're not going to have that gut decision that you're making. Definitely focus on adoption. Picking the CRM is only the very first part of it. Really focusing on how do I automate as much as I can so that I can maximize the value of the system, and making sure that you know which metrics you want to have. So with that, we have about 10 minutes left. I'd love to open it up to your team and see, what kind of things. And you can always book a meeting with me if you want to have anything. You can just take a screenshot of that with Bitly. But tell me some pain points, some questions, some thoughts, things that maybe I didn't answer that you're kind of struggling with. Anyone jump in? People. So if you're going to map things out, there's a ton of tools out there that are, some of them are free, some of them are paid. If you're on Office 365, Visio Basic is included on there, and Visio is a really great tool for actually helping you map out processes. Everyone learns a little bit different. So I think it's important to recognize that some are visual learners, some are more like reading, and some like to have that hands-on interaction. So I think it's important that when you're creating a training outline, it has to cover all the different spectrums of learning. So for us, we like the maps because they give a very nice visual drawing of what happens first, what happens second, what happens third, and it allows you to follow how the system is supposed to be working. We also do a lot of written documentation. And for the written documentation, we tend to use something called Scribe internally. I don't know if everyone's heard of it, but Scribe is a paid tool. They do have a free version, I believe. But the Scribe version allows me to create a how-to basically by having the mouse and the screen be recorded. So it automatically captures the picture of the work that I'm doing, and it puts in a little blurb based on what the AI sees that I'm doing. And then I can edit that, and it creates a really nice PDF how-to with screenshots and step 1, step 2, step 3. When that can't be done or you're on a budget, you can do the same thing using it in Word, screenshots and explaining. I think the biggest thing that folks forget how to do is when you're doing a training manual for someone, you want to start with the why and then go into the how. Because if they don't understand the why, it's really hard for them to get behind what they're doing. Hopefully that helped. Cool. Yeah, go for it.
Can you think of one or two things that, I mean, obviously you know what I do. Can you think of one or two things I should be using a CRM for? And
Mine
I,
would
sorry,
probably be surveys. I mean, I don't know if you're doing follow-ups, right?
that's exactly what I was just going to suggest if you think that would be something for me to work on. But no, I am not.
And not only that, but even if you skipped surveys altogether and you just went straight with referrals, the ask, right? Send out a follow-up text or a follow-up email. Probably text is more familiar with your kind of customer, right? Sending out a text like it was great to service, it was great to have you to be part of your event for the prom on, June 11th. If you have any other events or you have anyone else, please use this link to refer them or share this or give us a review on Google reviews. Like for you, I would imagine that the reviews and the referrals are the two areas that you're going to probably want to focus. So having that in the system, who's giving you referrals, who's giving you a Google review, and then
Okay,
sort out your CRM based on anyone that hasn't given you a review.
got it.
If when they use you saying, "Hey, we serviced, your event back in 2024. We haven't heard from you, wondered if there's anything else going on." Like it also allows you to upsell. So that would be something that I would do for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Not only that, but it gives you the opportunity to do follow-ups. If they don't do a review right after the event, maybe remind them again 2 or 3 weeks later, just so that they can actually stay top.
Yes, top of mind.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Steve or Janet or Brittany, any
Yeah,
questions?
Lorena, so I was going to ask you a question, and thanks for doing this. Did does the system able to calculate? So one of the key things I think you touched on was customer lifetime value, but does it able to calculate annual recurring revenue or ARR and kind of look at and alert you when if you're signing someone up for a contract, right? The contract has an end date, alert you when the contract ends so that you kind of know, okay, like if this contract's 3 months up from renewal, maybe I should start to kind of reach out to them and sort of touch on them and figure out when I could um, kind of broach that conversation with them. Is that something that's possible?
100%. There's a lot of the CRMs that actually have what's called the contract module, right? So it basically goes from lead to contact to opportunity to a contract. And the contract usually has like an expiration. You can put in the term or when the contract expires. And you can say whether it's a renewable or whether you have to apply for it. So some of the CRMs can actually have it so that it'll send you an alert, 60, 90, 180 days out, whatever you want it to be, you determine that. Or it'll allow you to actually create a rule that says when this is coming up for renewal, automatically create an opportunity so that I can just remember to follow up with them and do that 6 months before, or 30 days before, or whatever the case might be.
Awesome. That's helpful. And then is there one system over another that's better at that process?
That is what I would consider more of an advanced process, right? Because most
Okay.
people don't have that. So you're not going to be able to get something that is like on the first tiers. You're probably going to be looking more like an enterprise level or professional level with any of the CRMs.
Okay.
Most of them will allow that to happen. It's just a matter of how easily it can be done either by yourself or with an automation in the background. But all three, like the three big ones, HubSpot, Zoho, and Salesforce, all three of those do that. But they would be the higher level platforms.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yep. And I am a biased, totally biased, because Salesforce is my favorite, even though they're also my worst likely to work. They are such a great tool, but they're so nasty with the way they work. But they have one of the nicest contract renewal options in the system to like actually track renewals. So that I'm biased to that one for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on Zoho?
Zoho is great, but Zoho has a couple of different add-ons. There's Zoho CRM and then there's Zoho One. Zoho CRM is great if all you need is just a regular CRM. If you're going to use more than that, if you want to have project management, if you want to have mass marketing, if you want to do all of that stuff, then you want to use Zoho One because that actually gives you more. The only difference is that Zoho CRM has like 3 different levels and you can kind of pay by user. When you're looking at Zoho One, it is all encompassing for all the employees in your organization, and you've got to be able to show your payrolls to show how many people are actually on there because it's a lower price, but they make you pay for all the people in your organization.
You mentioned Got it. Lorena, you mentioned mass marketing. What would that entail?
That's like a mass, that's like a MailChimp or Constant Contact. So Zoho
Okay.
One
Okay.
has a mass email
Got it.
platform.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. So,
Cool.
well, guys, this was fantastic. I'm hoping that you got some use out of it. Like I said, if you want to connect, my bit.ly will take you to our meeting. And if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out.
Great.
Thank you so much, Lorena.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Take
Thank
care.
you both. Appreciate it.